Hi everyone, welcome to another riveting episode of TextPlay, and today we're going to play my favorite point-and-click adventure game, which is Loom, and we're going to play it with none other than Loom producer Greg Hammond, which I'm going to bring out in a sec. And so I hope you're all prepared to play this magnificent game once again. And this is a game I really hope that everyone experiences it for the first time, at least in the coming year, because it's unlike other point-and-click adventure games which are making a comeback. Loom, for some reason, isn't, because it wasn't remastered or talked about. Apart from the fact that it's still being introduced to players in Return to Monkey Island, as well as The Secret of Monkey Island, if you talk to Cobb. But anyway, today we're going to play Loom, and that's that. There's nothing you can do about it. So let me just thank our Patreon members. Thank you, guys. And thank our Coffee members. Thank you, guys. And today's donation goal is 1990, which is the year Loom was released. And the donation goal is called Bobbin Donation Bear. And that's it. Without further ado, let me bring out Greg Hammond. Hi, Greg.
Hey, Daniel.
How are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining me. You know, you being the producer of this magnificent game, I should be thanking you like on a daily basis, not just, whenever we play it or talk.
Well, I'm most grateful for the reception that the game has had over the years, and the recognition that it has for being a fairly unique game, especially for the time that it was released and developed. Brian Moriarty, who created the game, really pushed the boundaries of what the Scum engine was designed to do, and he had a unique vision for the game, and I think that's been borne out over time with people's playthroughs and enjoyment of the game. So I was just very happy to be involved. It was one of the first projects I worked on when I first arrived at Lucasfilm Games in the fall of '89. So I was blessed to be able to work on this with Brian.
And Brian was blessed to work on it with you.
Well, thank you. Very kind.
And so I always tell this story because I had the Hebrew version of Loom, which is thing. You see, it has a very special design that the original version didn't, because we have, let's see if we can see clearly, we have the gray marble, while in the English version you have the bluish marble, right? Yep.
There it is. Oh, it's not. It's getting greened out. There we go.
Yep.
Yeah.
So as you can see, they cropped the top part of the cover art because it said Loom in English, and then they had to change it. They didn't have Photoshop or remove background back then, so they had to do it. They had to hack their way through the.
Yes.
And recently, I got the limited run games version. It's still sealed.
Wow.
I think I don't plan to open it anytime soon. So it's sealed and it's got a plastic box around it.
Very cool. I have a couple of other little items I'll show you. This is a good time. So Loom was bestowed with the honor of, at that point, Computer Gaming World was a very popular magazine, and they gave Loom the special award for artistic achievement, particularly with regard to sound. And I'm not sure how this is going to come through. I'm going to try.
Well, you can remove the virtual background while you're showing
there you go.
all this memorabilia.
Yeah. So, but it's a nice plaque, and it's yellowed over the year. It was white when they first gave it to us, but that was fun. And then also I have a framed magazine ad that was running in magazines like Computer. Yeah, I may need to turn off my
Yeah,
my virtual
turn
background.
off
There
your
you go.
virtual background.
Okay, let me 1 second here.
So on Zoom, you have the little arrow. Just remove the virtual background and restore it once we start playing.
Okay, where is that?
So you have the video button at the bottom. You have the little arrow. Then you have
Oh yes, thank you.
Adjust backgrounds and such.
Okay, there we go.
Just choose none.
Yep, I'm working on it. None. There we go. Okay. So this is an ad that actually ran for Loom in magazines like Computer Gaming World back in the day, and it was how they used to promote games at that point and advertise games. It was really the primary mode or method of promoting games. So had that all these years, and it's just a fun piece of memorabilia. And then of course I've had my own boxed copy of the game with all of the accoutrements, the book with codes called the Book of Patterns.
You could have signed it yourself.
Yeah.
You could have had a signed copy by the producer.
And the copy protection back then was so that people weren't making copies of the discs, but that you had to use this red lens and look at parts of the Book of Patterns. And the Book of Patterns was just this really beautifully done add-on, really, to make this not just a copy protection device, but to make it something that people enjoyed looking at. It's beautifully illustrated and had some extra story and that kind of stuff. And then, of course, the gem here, besides the 5 1/4-inch discs, was the half-hour cassette tape with the drama on it, which sets up the story in the game beautifully. And it was done with the same voice actors who later did the CD-ROM full voice version. So just a little bit of trivia there for you.
You know, it's funny that by that time, copy protection was the thing that cost more than the game. So, for example, back then, color copying was very expensive. So color copying the Book of Patterns to have the copy protection would cost you more than the game. So you had the game. Then when you had CD-ROM games, then CD-ROM was the copy protection because they didn't expect you to burn your own CDs. It cost like $100 per CD. So just buy the game.
Yep.
So yeah.
Good perspective.
I remember that copy protection. Maniac Mansion also had that copy protection. Zach McCracken also had it. And that's it. By the time I played Monkey Island, I played the CD-ROM version, so we didn't have the copy protection at the beginning with Pirate Heads, but I did have Monkey Island 2, the floppy disk version. So I did have the wheel of the Voodoo Mixin' Mojo wheel.
Yeah, those wheels were so much fun. Steve Purcell and the crew did such an amazing job designing those.
Yeah, so we have the audio drama on our YouTube channel. It's 30 minutes. It's really great. It gives you a lot of background about the story. And interestingly enough, if you play the CD-ROM version, the text itself, the script has been truncated because they recorded the voices on CD audio. So they had to fit it into 60 minutes. And so the things they removed from the first part of the game with the elders is the exposition that you get in the audio drama. So when you play the floppy disk version, you get the exposition even if you don't have the audio drama. But if you play the CD-ROM version, you get a shorter version of that story. You still understand the gist of it, but it's not the same. So, yeah.
Yeah, you missed some of the detail. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. When was the last time you played this masterpiece?
So, true confessions, the last time I played it was when we were playtesting the game before release. Because that period of time was so intense, as it is with most games, I would say, that when you're trying to get the game completely debugged and you have everyone on deck playtesting, after you go through an experience like that, that's probably the last thing you want to do for a while is play that game again. And so that was the last time I played Loom, was getting it ready to go.
Okay. And did you play it all the way through back then?
Yes, but that was 36 years ago, and I don't remember. I've forgotten all of it.
Last year I planned to have 35th anniversary live stream of Loom. And the thing is, I didn't know the exact release date because for years we celebrated its anniversary in January because there are some newspapers that stated that it's going to be released in January 1990. And then we found more newspapers that say it's going to be released in February. And then there are other newspapers that said that it's in April, May. So when was the game released?
Good question. I don't remember, honestly. And I don't think places like Moby Games have that level of detail either. They just have the year. So
they don't.
But yeah, it was probably early in 1990. But honestly, it's escaped my memory. So.
Okay.
In fact, before you invited me to do this, I really haven't thought about Loom for quite a while. But it was nice to be reminded of the game. So thanks for the opportunity to join you for this.
Hopefully we'll be able to finish it today, because one of the complaints about Loom is that it's too short. And actually, it's probably one of the reasons why it's the first point-and-click adventure game I finished on my own without a walkthrough and without any outside help. So
yes, and that's a common theme when you see player reviews of the game. That was one of the things that actually people enjoyed, was that they were able to get through the game, and a lot of the time people got through it without any external help, which, before the internet, that was actually kind of a cool thing.
No, it made you feel smart. I felt yes, really smart. As over here, it was released in 1991. The copyright on this game is 1991 over here, and so the original game was imported. It wasn't published here, so the original game in English cost $100 over here.
Ooh, that's steep.
Yeah, and the localized version cost, I think, $49 or $40. So it was a much more reasonable price to get the localized version in Hebrew. And so that's why that's the version I played.
There you go. Good reasons.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm glad they localized it. That's really cool.
Yeah, apparently they didn't get any help from Lucasfilm Games. And so they had to hack the Scum engine and change the text. So they had to change the font file and change all the characters to Hebrew, and then write in English the equivalents to what they changed in that font file. And in order to not mess with the layout too much, they had to make sure that the text in Hebrew is shorter than the one in English, because otherwise...
Oh, what a labor of love.
Yeah.
Wow.
And yeah, and a 16-year-old translated it back then.
There you go. That's really cool. I love that background. Thank you, Daniel.
It's my pleasure. And it's all thanks to you creating the game. And, when we're currently looking at the Dream emulator that was created by Aaron Giles, and this emulator tries to find the original files and make sure that it recognizes which version of the game you have according to the files. And I remember when we tried to add support to the Hebrew version, we couldn't find the original files because apparently, since the game was hacked, there was no Hebrew executable. It was the English executable with all the hacked files, the font file and the text file. So that's why it took a while to get it to add support for it. And this is the game in Hebrew.
Oh wow, that's so cool.
So they couldn't translate things that were, graphic assets like Lucasfilm Games and Loom. So
right,
all
pixels.
Yeah. So you see, it still says Loom, but in the game itself, it's in Hebrew.
Okay.
Yep. But we're going to play the English version.
I would have been fine with the Hebrew version. There's not that much English language to deal with in the game, but obviously the labels for objects would be hard to read for non-Hebrew speakers like me and readers.
So which version do you want to play? The standard, the practice, or the expert?
I think you should go with standard.
Okay, very well. So I'm using the latest version of Dream, which actually does the copy protection for you. In the previous version, it's stated what the copy protection needs to be in this case, but in the latest version, it actually enters the code for you.
That's very thoughtful. Of course, the music is Swan Lake by Tchaikovsky.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't have the $10 to get the Roland MT32 version, so this is the ad-lib version.
Fun piece of trivia, my brother Eric worked on the ad-lib version of the sound for the game. There's also the OG version of the game in EGA graphics.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of dithering to create the illusion of more colors than just 16.
Yeah, and if you watch the Brian Moriarty's GTC talk, which recently celebrated its 10th anniversary, he states there that the VGA version misses some of the visual cues that he was going for in the EGA version. So
that's so interesting.
So, for example, the leaf stands out in the EGA version, while in the VGA version they try to go for, they used actual gradients and not just dithering. Yep. And
it's more subtle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and over there you have the sunset. So you actually have reddish hues around the leaf, which was supposed to be the only red thing in this scene. So they kind of missed out the point of this whole thing. So the major problem with the VGA versions back then was that it was created by artists which are not the artists who actually worked on the original version. So they usually used either an external company or other artists. It didn't involve the creators of the game. I love the dithering here.
Yeah. It's funny because I was just looking at the walkthrough of the CD-ROM version with voice on YouTube, and it uses the VGA graphics and the colors are more fully realized. But yeah, it's there's something special about seeing the original version of the game, I think.
Yeah. He also has a book of patterns.
Not by coincidence.
I don't think that I picked up the book of patterns when I played the game back then. I wasn't aware of the fact that you could pick it up.
Well, it's one of the few things you can. in the game. And that was one of the things about Loom that was so different, in not just the musical interface, but also the fact that you didn't really have much of an inventory. So, Brian was really doing so many things that were different from the state of the art at that point and what people expected from point and click adventure games. And I think it was one of the reasons that it was so hard for him to finish was that it, not only do you have the challenge of doing that new thing, and being outside of what people expected from a game like this at that time. But then there were the technical aspects of any game that you're working on. I remember there being just one bug that kept rearing its ugly head, and it went on for, it felt like weeks at the time to hunt that thing down and keep it from popping up. I don't remember the nature of the bug itself, but I just remember that there were a few things like that were causing him to lose a lot of sleep. And at one point, we weren't entirely sure the game was going to happen.
During production?
Yes, thank God he persevered, and a lot of us around him were giving him good support, but he was very much alone on this project in terms of being the driving force and the really the only creative working on the game in terms of having the vision and carrying that vision. So there was a lot for him, a lot on his shoulders, really, to handle, to get the game done and ship it.
People in the chat are mentioning that you can't pick up the Book of Patterns in the CD-ROM version.
Oh, that's interesting.
And one other aspect of the CD-ROM version, which is kind of problematic, is the fact that there is no music. There is no MIDI music like we have in the EGA version. The music is tied to the dialogue. So only during times in which characters talk, you can hear the background music briefly because you need to focus on what the character is actually saying. And in the rest of the scene, when you walk around, you don't have any music, which is kind of disappointing.
Yeah, it feels like there's something missing, right?
Mm-hmm. One thing I always wondered is whether, since it's the SCUM engine, whether drafts are inventory items or verbs.
That's a very good question. If I knew that at one point, I have forgotten, so I apologize. It's a good question.
I mean, on one hand, I consider them inventory items because, much like inventory items, there are times in which you can pick them up. And in this game, even if you know a draft beforehand, sometimes you don't have the right notes. You haven't reached one of the notes, one of the higher notes, in order to play it. And one other thing I always wondered is whether or not this game adheres to Ron Gilbert's manifest of why adventure games suck, because he always talked about the fact that the main problem he has with Sierra games is the fact that they have dead ends and deaths. And that's exactly the problem I had with Sierra games for quite some time. And I only started liking Sierra games after they LucasArts them used LucasArts philosophies in their gameplay. So, for example, they started adding they didn't remove the deaths altogether. They added a try again button, so you didn't have to save the game constantly, and they stopped with the dead ends. But over here, my question is, if you don't write the draft down, there are certain locations that you cannot go back to relearn the draft. So if you don't write it down, then you're stuck. Question is this a dead end or just a mishap of the player not following orders properly?
I think it's a unique part of what makes Loom so special is that it was really incumbent upon the player to somehow record what they learned along the way. And, if you have a musical memory, this was not a problem for you because you could hear those drafts and learn them. And I think people who, especially who had multiple playthroughs, that just became part of their memory. But most of us have to write them down.
Yep.
I will say that the voices that they did for the CD-ROM version were, I thought, quite good. But I know that that's a bit controversial.
Well, like you said, that these are the same voices they used for the audio drama.
Yes.
But the game itself is far less dramatic. I played, I think last year or 2 years ago, I played the EGA version and the VGA version side by side to see the differences. Now, the games don't sync properly because the dialogues are shorter in the CD-ROM version, but another aspect that was removed was the close-ups. You don't have the close-ups in the game, probably due to CD the
like this.
Yeah, the reading speed of the CD-ROM drive back then, and the fact that it had to read a new image and display it on screen messed up with the CD audio that had to be playing continuously during that scene. So probably they removed it altogether.
That makes sense.
Do you remember the first pizza orgy they did for this game? Do you remember which parts of the game were shown?
This was a different kind of project at Lucasfilm Games because, as I said earlier, Brian was the sole creator in terms of the writing and the scripting and really having the vision for the game. And yes, the art team supported the game with what they did for it. But normally you'll have a team of scripters working on something like Monkey Island. And that was, I think, another thing that weighed on Brian so heavily was just that he was really solely responsible for creating and finishing the game. And that included everything from technical challenges to carrying the artistic vision and making something that was different for this kind of game than had been seen before. So there were so many aspects of this project that were really challenging, and to have one person carrying that weight on their shoulders for the most part. I don't remember having pizza parties for this game. I'm sure there were, but it was a different kind of project.
I mean, management had to ask for a demo of the game.
Oh yes. I mean, there were versions of the game that were being checked out by everyone, and that's normal. But and I'll also just give a disclaimer that, again, I mean, 36 years ago, my memories of that period of time are a bit hazy at this point, and I'm sure that David Fox and others, Ron Gilbert, would have their own unique perspectives on this project, and working with Brian and seeing how everything unfolded to get the game produced and finished. And but the finishing part of this project was really And there were some pretty dark days there where we were just not sure that it was going to happen at times. Um, and so the fact that it released and was given to the world as something different in the form of an adventure game um, is remarkable in its own uh, sense, really.
I agree. Do you remember the draft for opening the egg?
Open was it's a simple one. It's like CDDC or something like that.
It's ECED.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I'm thinking of a different one, I think.
The ECE is close.
The reverse, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So I would just love to call attention to, again, the perception of more colors than actually exist on the screen because of the work that people like Mark Ferrari did to um, create uh, really the labor that went into producing this art and giving the illusion of more than 16 colors is remarkable.
No. And usually, I think this game is a good example of less is more, especially since the
Yes.
VGA version seems. I mean, the design of the EGA version gives you a sense of a gloomy world, while the VGA version is much more colorful, which makes it more hopeful. But the game is not hopeful, at least not the way it ends, which gives you a sense that which is a cliffhanger for the sequel that was never created.
Yeah, and I think there's a really good reason why there was never a sequel, is because it really would have been incumbent upon Brian to do that, and with as hard as it was for him to see this project through, and that's through no fault of his own, just because it was a different time and he was doing something very different again for this kind of this genre of game. Um, I think a lot of people would have enjoyed having a sequel, and it's too bad that it wasn't done. Um, I have a topic. I'm curious to know what kind of game, what kind of story, really, people think this is. Is it, what milieu of fiction are we talking about here? There's an obvious answer, but I think there's a less obvious answer as well.
The obvious answer would be fantasy.
Yes.
But the least obvious answer is probably the correct one, because I'm not a fan of fantasy stories. Things like Game of Thrones and all these.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a fan of those, but I'm a fan of this game. So there's something different about this game.
There's a clue, and when you get farther along, that clue will pop up. So I won't mention it explicitly just now, but and maybe I just should defer the rest of this conversation for when we get to that point in the game. But you see things like the Loom, and the Loom doesn't. There's something special about it, the way that it is animated and the way that it's drawn and constructed. There's something about it, and then this is the first glimpse into what I'm talking about in terms of how she opens a portal and flies into what looks like space. And sure, there's a lot of fantasy that deals with portals and magic teleportation and things like that. But I'll let it rest for right now. When we get to that point in the game that I'm thinking of, we can bring it back up.
Okay. Emmanuel Goldstein in the chat says occult, maybe?
It's an interesting idea, and yes, there is a little bit of that here. I think the game does a pretty good job. Brian did a good job of balancing the story so that you're led along and you're discovering things and you can make your own conclusions based on that. But this is kind of why I brought this up in the first place, is just to say, the obvious milieu here is fantasy, but with magic. But I think there might be another take on it. So we'll see what people think.
And AT Machine says in the chat, given the tenor of Moriarty's other games, I might call it a tragedy.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. There's a lot of tragic stuff going on in this story.
Okay.
And you get a lot of that. You get that is set firmly by the audio drama before you even start playing the game. If you listen to that 30-minute audio drama, it sets up the story perfectly.
Well, we didn't get it over here. We don't have the audio drama in the Hebrew version.
Oh, well, but you, like you said, you have that on your site. So, and it's out there on YouTube.
30 years later.
Yeah.
I needed it back in 1991.
You know what the audio drama, to me, the audio drama it's so well done, the music and the voice and the writing, that it's sort of like when we had games in the early 80s, right? And you had these Atari packages and they showed this amazing cover art, right? And then you get in and you're playing on an Atari 2600 and you have beeps and boops for sounds and you have, blocky Space Invaders or whatever on the screen. That is sort of what happened here, right? The audio drama is so well done that it's like this sets up this beautiful mental imagery of what's going on in this world. And then you get into the game and you're still dealing with EGA graphics. So I think that audio drama helped a lot of people kind of get into the game because they were realizing, oh, wow, this is really what this is all about. And most games, especially during that time, didn't have anything close to that, if they had anything at all like that. So that was really special, I think.
Yeah, but the audio drama sets the bar high, and for people like me who played the game with the PC speaker on and not a sound blaster or ad-lib card, then hearing the music through the PC speaker was too much of a downgrade for me to be able to handle the audio drama.
That's valid, and I can totally see that. Yeah, I mean, my perspective on that is totally warped because working in the industry, of course, we always had decent sound hardware, and it was just part of what we were working with. But I also started with the Apple II, and before the Mockingbird happened, which most people didn't have on that, there was a lot of beeps and boops. So, so I've seen the full gamut of sound.
I need to write down the drafts. Okay, let's see what we have here. The green one is GDE.
Thank you for doing that, because I'm relying on you as you're playing the game to remember these things, because I'm not going to remember them, especially since I'm not having to enter them.
This is die DD Now, you talked about the Book of Patterns, and one of the things that surprised me about the Book of Patterns is when I finished the game, I noticed that there were some drafts that you never get to learn and aren't part of the game.
And I think that might have been just a way to hint at the fact that what you're learning as a player in this game is really just a slice of what this world is really all about for Bobbin and the other inhabitants, especially the Weavers.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so this is die.
I think you have to act on the heap of fabric on the floor.
Yeah, I did it on this heap of fabric in the basket.
There you
now
go.
I'm going to do it on this one.
There we go. More
Awesome.
green fabric than you can shake a stick at. Oh, well, you just did though.
Green, my least favorite color.
And
Okay.
I will take a poke at the game and all point and click adventure games and just say there's an awful lot of backtracking and time spent making the character move through areas that you've moved through before because you have to get back to where you were or to do something, and I think that's partly the milieu, partly the genre that we're dealing with here, and partly the time in which this game was done. Um, and it may also point to why uh, point and click adventure games are not a uh, very popular form of game in the modern sense, in modern context. Um, those of us who have the history and the appreciation for the art form, it will always be special. But I think for the average game player, they you would have to kind of reinvent and rethink some things about the genre to make it work for modern gamers. That's just my perspective.
Well, the thing with backtracking and the fact that you need to walk a lot was part of the thing that they had at the time, because they had to give you 40 hours of gameplay. So you got 40 hours of gameplay by walking around.
Exactly. Yes. It's
And
like when you're in Fortnite and you have to run across the island to get to something, it turns into running simulator, right? It's not so much a shooter at that point; it's just a running simulator.
yeah, but by the time they started adding quick exits to games, like they had in The Dig and they had in Full Throttle, then people felt like the game's too short because you can just get to places quicker.
Yep. I always felt bad for this rabbit.
So Emmanuel asks, they had to give you 40 hours of gameplay? Well, that was the promise in the back of most of the big boxes they had at the time. So they had all kinds of methods to do that. Zach McCracken gave you tons of mazes. And, Ron Gilbert said that in order to give you 40 hours of gameplay in Monkey Island 2, each puzzle required something from each one of the 3 islands that you had in the game. So in order to solve a puzzle, you had to go through all 3 islands, and that's how you get the 40 hours of gameplay.
Yep. Which there's a certain logic to that. Whether you agree that that's fun or not is up to each individual, I suppose.
Well, given the fact that people complained about the fact that Loom was too short, so they didn't feel that they got their money's worth, then it was true for the time. People wanted something back for their $40. And
it was being compared at that point, and it still is to a certain extent, to other forms of entertainment. So if you go and watch a movie, well, back in 1990, you're probably paying
$2,
$1.50 or something, or $2 to see a first run movie in a theater. So it was that's where the metric of $1 per hour of entertainment, I think, came from originally. I'm probably wrong to a certain extent about that, but
and now it's the other way around.
Yeah.
Like you may pay $40 to go watch a movie with your wife or $100 with your entire family when you can just buy an indie game for like $15 and have, 10 hours of gameplay.
I mean, yeah, and it's really the inverse of that we've come to with the attention economy, where people's time is what brands are trying to attain. They want loyalty, they want repeat habits and repeat viewership and gameplay and all that. And it's a very different economy at this point that creators and publishers are addressing.
Oh, wait, I need to listen to the wheel.
There you go.
Let's hear that again. D-E-B-C.
And now you want to stand in front of the straw, I think.
Yep. D-E. You see, it's been 36 years, but you remember everything.
Part of that's because I watched part of a playthrough. Now I didn't get through that whole playthrough, so the last half of the game is once again a mystery to me.
I mean, how surreal is it to watch? Back in the day, you would see reviews whenever there were shows on TV about upcoming computer games, or you would read reviews in computer game magazines. But now that you can actually watch people playing the game that you worked on 30 years ago, it's probably kind of surreal.
It is weird, yeah. Very weird. But I don't know. I think people are always surprised. Like, would you think that some of the music that was produced in the 60s and 70s would be getting so much airtime and play time now? And if something's good and has been, it's original and unique, the value of that can be recognized for a long time after it's created. And that's just true of any art.
Okay. Let's see what we need to do next. Oh, let's look at the tombstone.
There we go. Now, this is where I was getting to with my earlier comments about what are we dealing with here in terms of the milieu of the story,
mm-hmm.
the genre. So look at the dates.
7,983 to 8,004.
So the clear options here are, one, this isn't Earth and it's some other world, and it's a very old, very mature society, although on the surface of it they live with very simple means. If this is Earth, then this is a long time in the future, and a lot of stuff has happened, and they hint at that in the audio drama and the lead into the game, because it's the second age, I think they talk about, but it's also a world where there are dragons and things like that. So it clearly feels like fantasy, but if this is at all meant to be Earth, then I think it's more a science fiction story that's wrapped in a fantasy exterior.
They could have used the same ending as Planet of the Apes, like have the Statue of Liberty at the end of the game.
Right. The technology that the main character is using with the staff, and if you look at the loom and what's happening, it feels like fantasy, but it could just as well be. And there's some stuff that pops up later too, fairly soon, in fact, when we get to the glass makers, where you know got teleportation going on, and okay, we know about that in terms of magic and that kind of stuff with plenty of examples of that in magic and in fantasy, but um, it could just as well be technology based stuff.
Amber Owl in the chat says, this game had a huge impact on my younger self. I still think about this game even today. Really wonderful game. Yeah, I agree.
Love hearing that. That's awesome.
And we talked before the live stream about the fact that people keep talking about this game and people love this game. But the problem is that most people don't place it at the top of their top 3 or top 5 favorite point-and-click adventure games. It's usually the Monkey Islands, or when it comes to Monkey Island, it depends on whether you're born in the 80s or the 90s, because if it's the 80s, then your favorite Monkey Island is probably 1 or 2. If you were born in the 90s, then your favorite is Curse of Monkey Island. Like, for a lot of people, this was their introduction to the Monkey Island series, Curse of Monkey Island. And Day of the Tentacle is also on everyone's list, but nobody places Loom at the top. But I do.
Well, I love that, Daniel. Thank you. That's really special. I think it's really a personal thing, of course, and I think your perspective on when people start playing games and when they come of age and when they first experience a game like this, that also certainly factors in.
Look at the reflection in the water. This is amazing.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah, the attention to detail with the art team was just very special, unique.
Yeah, and you talked about the portals, and one of the factors that play into the lore of this game is the fact that the Loom controls the fabric of reality. Like, the reality is a cloth that you can tear open and saw back together. And in his GDC talk, Brian Moriarty talked about the animation that Ken Macklin created at the end, when the swans take the fabric of reality with them and it flaps around and looks amazing. And again, this is 1990, and these are 16 colors. EGA 16 colors. To get closer first. Were there parts of the games, and were there parts of this game that you played more than other parts, like during testing periods and such?
I'm sure there were. I wouldn't be able to tell you now what they were when you get into it. We'll pause here for the dramatic moment. Okay. When you're working to final a game and get it ready for release, especially back then, we didn't have the option to patch the game, of course, because it was shipping on physical discs and everything had to be right. You didn't have a second chance. And so, when you're dealing with the early days of PC games and floppy disks, and then you add to the mix things like sound cards, different kinds of sound cards. There were a lot of things that could go wrong, and it required kind of an army of testers to be banging on lots of different kinds of machines, configured different ways. And even then, you know, you're going to eventually run into something that is so rare that it's very, very difficult to recreate. And there were games that shipped with stuff like that, and it was just the way it was. But to answer your question more directly, I don't remember specific parts of the game and testing on them specifically, other than we had certain parts of the game that we knew there were problems popping up, and you would play through those, and sometimes we'd be given a version of the game that, you know, jumped you into the middle to allow us to focus on a specific part of it. But for the most part, we were just playing the game that we were trying to launch and keeping it as pure as possible so that we weren't introducing unknown or new variables that would make it hard to know if the problem we were running into was legit or if it was caused by the fact that we were playing a modified version of the game. So that's why you didn't do too much of that until you ran into something that was like, okay, this is something that's we think is being caused by a specific piece of hardware, like a sound card or something weird like that. But yeah, I mean, this is why you ask, you know, when was the last time I played the game? It really was during that testing to get the game released. So I'll let you continue here with the dramatic moment of the tree becoming a non-tree.
Before I continue, Near in the chat asks, were there any drafts that got cut because they broke too many puzzles?
Good question. You know, I think there may have been, as you mentioned a little while ago, Brian cut. Brian, there were more drafts in the book of, was it the Book of Drafts? What was it called?
Yep.
Then you
Book
see
of
in the
Patterns.
game. Book of Patterns. Thank you. Yeah, to reach and get it. But this is also, I mean, you know, this was a cool way that the game provided for having your own personal notebook of the drafts and remember, you know, writing down what they were in the book. That was really cool. But yeah, that's a good question. I don't remember specifically that there were more drafts that got cut, but that may have happened before I started working on the project. I wasn't the producer on the project from the very beginning. I was brought in and was put on the project to help Brian clear roadblocks and get the thing done and shipped. So.
Well, I have the answer ready, Near. So let's watch the answer.
There you go.
So this is Brian's GDC talk.
Good.
Which for some reason is unlisted on YouTube, but I have a copy. Let's listen to what he has to say about the game.
Problem. I had big first edition, which I presented to my wife, who I did not see very often during the making of this game. Very little of the art created for Loom went unused, but the glass makers always seemed to be a problem. I had big plans for these guys, big plans, but most of my ideas never panned out. This is Mark's original design for their realm, Six Flags Emerald City. But we couldn't figure out how to do it in less than a dozen rooms, so we had to simplify it. This was a time travel puzzle, which involved using the empty draft to annoy the guy filling up the hourglasses. And it got dropped and we changed the design for the city. This stupid room drove me absolutely crazy. A hall of mirrors, one of those time-wasting mazes I should have known better than to put in the game, but really cool to look at, with multiple bobbins moving in opposite directions. Finally got it working, but it turned out to be stupid easy to solve, so we dropped it. Loom was translated into several foreign languages, including French, German, Spanish, Italian, Russian, Japanese, and I think Korean. Here are the boxes for the German and Spanish editions. Unfortunately, the audio drama was only translated twice into French and German. These are my test copies. The packages in other languages did not come with a cassette. Our British distributor wanted a translation with authentic American voices. This was turned down for economic reasons. So there was also this intriguing and very collectible Hebrew edition. Somebody told me it was paid for by a private Israeli businessman who really liked the game and wanted to make it available in his own company. Can anyone read this? What does it say? Oh, I was okay. Great, thank you. I've always wondered what this line.
I know the guy who translated it for him.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Very collectible.
Very collectible.
There you go.
Okay.
That's a good clip from his talk. And clearly, when you're making a game like this, a lot of ideas come up along the way, and some of them just don't work. And so it's like editing anything else, a film or anything else. You're going to end up with stuff that you leave behind because it's not meeting the need. I loved how he shared that about the glassmakers section of the game, which you're going to be getting to not too long from now. So good perspective there.
Wait, so do you remember the time travel puzzle, or was it before your time?
It may have been before my time. I don't remember that puzzle, but then again, I don't remember a lot about this game. It was kind of a blur. It was more a project management challenge for me than a game project per se, because we were kind of squashing bugs and trying to get the game shipped. And again, this was a particularly challenging project for Brian because he was pushing the envelope of what was possible with the Scum engine. And a lot of great ideas, of course, aren't going to necessarily work within the parameters or what that engine is designed to do well.
And how do you, as a producer, handle the project management aspects of the game when the development and the story rely on one person? It's not just the project project manager, and you have the developers. You have one person that does most of the work.
Right. I mean, the art team, of course, is doing that aspect of the game, but everything else was pretty much Brian. And so there's all that pressure and weight on his shoulders, and being the person who's responsible for carrying the artistic vision of the story and the game and the characters, as well as having to deal with annoying technical challenges that come up that have to be met. That really was all of that having to be done by Brian that almost killed the project, because there were a period of a couple of weeks there where it was touch and go, and he was really struggling, but he found a way through it. Certainly had a lot of support from all of us, but at the end of the day, it was Brian who had to figure it out and solve those issues and get the game ready to ship, and he did. And that's why we're here talking today.
Wait, so the issues you're talking about are bugs, or
it was a mix of
writer's
bugs.
block?
It was a mix of bugs, and I think also just the challenges associated with doing something that's breaking a lot of molds. There's a reason that Loom is as short as it is, but also as unique as it is because he did things, this was his, one of the primary driving forces for this project was he really wanted it to feel and look and play differently. And when you combine all those aspects of doing something different and unique and groundbreaking, you're going to run into brick walls and you're going to have issues. So it was I would say half and half. This is my perspective. I'm sure Brian would have his own perspective as the person who lived it, but as the person who was working with him as his project manager, producer. I think it was equal parts artistic challenge and squashing bugs and working with the limits of the scum system to do what he wanted to do. So yeah, it was challenging. I mean, I had not been with Lucasfilm Games that long before they put me on the project, and immediately it became clear that not only was this a very different kind of project, but that with the one person driving it, there was not a team of people who could solve problems. You had one person, and certainly David Fox and Ron Gilbert and others were available, Eric Wilmunder, available to help Brian think things through. But Brian was also his own person, and he was kind of iconoclastic and really wanted to do things his way. And in some ways, that was why we have Loom, and in other ways, it could have been detrimental to getting the game done more smoothly. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, but when it comes to story and the overall look of the game, then I understand why he wants to keep these things. He wants to be responsible for these things, but there are things he can delegate. If there are bugs in the code or the scum engine doesn't work properly, give it to Ron, give it to Eric.
Yeah, from my perspective and my memory, also, it didn't work that way as much with Brian. He this was his baby, and he wanted to solve it himself. If future conversations with any of them, David or Ron, if this comes up, they'll probably have much better memories on it than I do. But I was new enough at that point that I was stepping into a situation where I wasn't really familiar with a lot of the backstory in terms of how the project came to be and the history of work on it. So I was coming up to speed as quickly as I could and grappling with both personal challenges and technical challenges, and trying to be the best support I could for Brian to help him get through it. But my abilities there were kind of limited because he felt, I think my perspective is, he felt like this was his problem. These were his problems to solve. It's his project, and he was the only one who really could solve them. But enough about that. I mean, we're playing this game. We're talking about it now 36 years later because he did meet the challenges and persevere and get it done.
Yep.
So
now let's watch the lighting hit the tree.
Yes.
This was the longest build-up for a scene in the game ever.
Yes. Sorry, everyone.
No. This is why we're here.
Everyone's watching a group of black pixels move its way across the screen.
This part over here doesn't make sense, okay? I understand that from a player's perspective, you don't want to have too much time without bobbing showing on screen. But if it goes down this path, then it should take at least 5 seconds from here for him to get down here.
Well, and that's an example of, I think, a compromise that the game designer makes to prevent too much time where we're not seeing the character on the screen. because it can feel like a bug or a problem. And so, yeah, those are the little trade-offs that designers make, especially when you're working in a medium like this, where you have a simulation of depth of field and multiplanar sets, really.
And since the scaling of characters was added by Brad Taylor for Monkey Island, which came out after this game, then in the scenes in which Bobbin is supposed to scale, he always walks behind an object and then it comes out larger at the other end.
Yep. So there were a set of sprites that were created for each different scale of the main character.
EFC. DEFC. Purple. So when it comes to working on point-and-click adventure games, you always have a puzzle dependency chart in which you make sure that if you want to solve this puzzle, you need to have this puzzle solved first. But in this game, it was pretty easy or easier than other games, because you could just place a gateway to a certain puzzle by having a higher note be part of it. So for example, in order to get this note, I had to do a bunch of things on the island, and otherwise I can't get off the island because I can't perform this draft, which I'm supposed to play backwards, which is another great thing because it teaches you the draft that we used on the straw that we turned to gold and then back to straw is the part of the game that taught us that you can reverse drafts to get the opposite effect.
Yes.
No.
Well, I think that's one of the things that people have remarked upon with Loom, is that it felt like a more player-friendly game that wasn't designed to thwart their progress, but allowed them to enjoy moving through the game and having that sense of accomplishment and then finishing the game, which, how many people feel like they finish games? And now a lot of games aren't designed to be finished anymore, but back in the day, adventure games certainly were. Welcome to the Shore and welcome to the G note.
Ozzy in the chat says someone is selling the CD version of Loom on eBay for $900.
Oh my, that seems excessive.
Well, you can sign your copy and then sell it on eBay and say the producer of the game signed this copy and sell it for $5,000.
Well, I'll take it under consideration. How about that? Welcome to the city of the glassmakers.
Well, this game taught me to love Tchaikovsky's music.
Oh, that's awesome. See, that's another good thing about it. Yeah, it's hard to go wrong with classics like Tchaikovsky.
It's hard to go wrong because you don't need to pay for the copyrights, so you're good.
There's that too. Yeah, it is sad that the close-ups like this are not present in a CD-ROM game.
Yeah. It seemed like, we usually CD versions after Loom was released on CD versions used to have extra content, like you have in addition to extra scenes or voices. But when it came to the CD-ROM version of Loom, the novelty of having voices was probably enough, and people ignored the fact that it was much shorter and the game was changed drastically in order
I think
to.
you're absolutely right. Yes. Yes. Mm.
So you never played the CD version?
I have not played the CD version
Okay.
because the last time I played the game was,
Yeah, I got it, but I think
shortly before we shipped.
so. Just
And then I
think
was
that
on.
if the original game was considered short, then the CD version is even shorter. But there's an extra scene that was added to the CD version that is present in the EGA version only in expert mode. So when you remove your
Oh wow,
your
that's cool.
hood, when you remove your hood to show Cobb yourself, like later in the game, then in
Yeah.
the expert mode you actually see him dying, while you don't get to see that scene in the standard and practice modes.
Oh wow,
And in the
that's
CD
good to know.
version, it's present in all of the levels: standard, practice, and expert.
Once the original game shipped for Loom, other people took on the management of porting and things like that. And so I wasn't involved after that. I was on to Monkey Island and other projects. So I love hearing those kinds of details. It's fun.
People who want to play the VGA version without any of the with the script of the EGA version, then you can always play the FM Towns version, which is the version that people are talking about in the chat. And the FM Towns version is the same as the EGA version, just with VGA graphics and without any of the dialogue truncated, because it doesn't have any voices.
Nice. So the FM Towns version then is the definitive best version to play.
I wouldn't say definitive, because Brian Moriarty stated in his GDC talk that he doesn't like the VGA version, and the EGA version is the definitive version.
To each their own.
Yep. Well, given the fact that the EGA version is the version he worked on, he wouldn't say, you know what, that other version that a few people ported, that's the definitive one.
That's valid, yes.
So you think that since this game takes place in the future and probably on Earth, and it's more of a sci-fi than fantasy, sci-fi story?
Well, it's got tons of fantasy elements to it, right? I mean, it's got dragons, and we're about to get to a point in the story here where they talk about a dragon or dragons attacking the city of glass. But it we would have to ask Brian himself, and maybe and I guess he didn't talk about this in his talk, or you would remember that. But my sense is that it's a science fiction story masquerading as a fantasy.
but with no actual sci-fi aspects apart from the fact that it's the future.
Well, that's the thing. But like, we know Arthur C. Clarke's famous quote, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So the fact that he can perform magic with quotes around it, using this staff. Okay, the staff looks like it's made of wood, but we don't know what it's really made of, and we don't know how it works. The loom itself, I think, and also the early opening of that rift by the baby swan that was his stepmother. I think there are some really interesting pointers, and then the year being so far in the future. My guess is that it's the far distant future of Earth. The fact that we have dragons flying around, I don't know. I don't know what to make of that. Maybe it's a red herring, but I think of it as a science fiction story that feels like a fantasy.
So AT Machine in the chat says, well, the treatment of space in this game is very sci-fi. Mm-hmm. The world is treated like a 2D piece of paper with the living on one side and the dead on the other.
Mm-hmm. Good observations.
Tybern says it's basically post-apocalyptic fantasy. And AT Machine expands on his theory and says the finale has that paper basically ripped in two, so to speak, when chaos or we rip the fabric of reality.
But like we're just going to get right into the teleportation here with devices in the Glass City. So I argue for this is a far distant future Earth where technology looks and feels and acts like magic.
Tyburn says the way weavers are described in the audio drama was that the guild became so advanced, wherein they could weave the fabric of reality itself, so essentially magic, by willing the universe to change.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's two sides of the same coin. Whether you think of it as magic and fantasy or science fiction, you're getting to the same place. It's just a matter of kind of how you think about it.
Is the machine
So
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
You go.
I was going to say this scene is a perfect example of classic, point and click adventures where you enter a scene and the gatekeepers say no, and you have to figure out a way around them, and we have to learn how the clan of the forest turns themselves invisible so that we can pass by these gatekeepers.
AT Machine has an interesting observation. He says, do you notice how the teleport bells have red sparkles like failed drafts? When you do a correct draft, then it's green, and when you have a failed draft, then it's red. So when you teleport, it has the same animation as a failed draft. You see the red sparkles. And he says maybe that's because teleportation is unnatural in some way.
I like that. You again, yeah. I can't remember if there's more than one way that they respond to Bobbin coming back again.
Well, that's what Ron Gilbert and Tim Schafer liked about the fact that they didn't have voices in the games back then, because you could change the dialogue like
Sure.
a day before shipping it, or add
Yep.
1,000 different responses to the same thing.
Yep. At the end of the day, you're really trying to craft an enjoyable, worthwhile story and game, and make respect the player's time and intelligence and creativity, because players are very creative and they're going to do things and think of things that designers don't. But at the same time, you've got to ship the game, and somehow you have a limited number of, in this case, we're talking about responses to the same set of circumstances. Bobbin keeps coming back. Do these guys have a different line that they can use each time he comes back? And eventually you'll run into a repeat of that. But I don't remember if there was more than one here. I do like the fact that it was this quick to go, okay, I need invisibility, and then come back and get by them. This scene and another scene in the Glass City are interesting examples of where Brian was working with a multi-planar set and having to have the player navigate that to get through that particular point in the game.
Yeah, and unlike other point-and-click adventure games in which you walk behind an object, and that's why, all of these adventure games have 3D graphics stated in the back cover, because it was considered 3D to walk behind objects or in front of objects. But in this case, since this is the Glass City, then you actually see his reflection, or it's somewhat distorted reflection in the glass, so it makes a much more interesting effect. And
I'll read from the back of the box. One of the bullet points, the first bullet point in the features of the box on the back: stunning, high-resolution 3D landscapes.
They are stunning.
There you go.
They're not 3D, but sure.
But what is 3D really?
Yeah. What is reality?
Exactly.
Okay, let's see. EFFE.
Yep.
This was like our hint keeper in the game.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we now have 3 different scenes that it's shown us. Wow, so that one started with high C.
Yeah, this one's Transcendence, if I remember correctly. That's the final one that you need to use to become a swan.
Okay, so we're now back to the first one. Okay.
Tyburn says it has to go back to the first one because probably they weren't sure if players got their book of patterns ready in time to write down this draft.
Totally valid. Absolutely. And you definitely have to make things like that the player needs to know and remember available, so that they can go back and retrieve them if they, for some reason, didn't record them.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a Sierra game in which you may realize that you forgot to pick up something at the end of the game and have to replay the game in its entirety.
Yeah, that, you want to talk about hardcore game design, that is brutal. And I just wonder how many people, when they realized they had boxed themselves into a corner or painted themselves into a corner, pick your favorite metaphor, but how many people just said, nope, I'm done. I don't care how much I paid for the game. I'm done. I don't ever want to see this game again.
That was me with Sierra Games back
I think
then.
a lot of us had that same reaction to Sierra games back in the day when they were first coming out. It's just like, guys, this is not the way you treat players, and it's not fun. Um, just a very different way of thinking about game design, and I think for me anyway, as a designer, it's a matter of respecting the player's time.
But they thought that it would get more hours of gameplay because.
Yeah, but at what cost, right? I mean, and
Look,
I mean, they gained a reputation for that as a result. So, we all know what that means when you say Sierra games and King's Quest and things like that. It's just like, oh yeah, pain.
plus, it was very profitable for them because you had to call the hint line to
Oh my
understand
gosh,
what went wrong.
what a business model.
Yeah, a very profitable one. Tyburn says, since Greg's here, I can finally ask. Later in the game, is it actually possible for Bobbin to heal everyone, or are certain deaths inevitable?
Ooh, that's a great question. I wish I knew the answer. You're asking a person who last played this game 36 years ago. So
Did you
I
heal
think we'll have to
everyone back
find that
then?
out together. Maybe the internet knows. Not what we expected.
Well, since the scare draft turned me into a dragon, maybe the dragon we'll see later on in the game is actually a person who's using the scare draft constantly,
I like that.
and not an actual dragon.
There's one person out there who knows the answer to that question.
Yep. AEDC.
Mm-hmm. And now you can go back to sleep. Yeah.
Yeah. Sleep.
If only we had the A note unlocked.
We don't. So let's take a walk. You see, so over here, instead of scaling Bobbin, you walk
Yep. They make him
behind this heap of
disappear behind a
grass.
hill. Yep. Yep. Daniel, remind me, when's the last time you played through Loom?
I think it was last year when I played the EGA version alongside the VGA version.
For the 35th. There we go.
Yeah.
That's right. Teeny tiny bobbin in the distance. I think for the further reinforcement of the fantasy genre is just the settings like this. You're in a wood building and a bucolic landscape and sheep, the whole works. It all screams fantasy. But I think I still maintain that the fantasy wrapper is just that, and it's really science fiction. It's really the future.
Back in the day, you didn't have to pay for likenesses in games, so you could model the close-ups and base them on LucasArts employees.
There you go.
Just like Sierra used Sierra employees as extras in their FMV games.
That's fun.
Our local dragons seem to have acquired the taste for fresh mutton.
There we go.
When we talked to Roberta Williams about the dead ends, then it seemed that they didn't actually know that some things would lead to dead ends. And when I talk about puzzle dependency and such, then Ron Gilbert and people at LucasArts took their time when it came to designing a puzzle to make sure that you don't reach a point in which you can't solve the puzzle and you can no longer find the solution for solving the puzzle.
Right. Yeah, there was a lot of care put into that. And I have huge admiration for Ron and Brian and others, David Fox, who I think really mastered this art form and figured out not only how to create this engine and maximize its utility to tell stories and create memorable adventure games, but they also they're sort of building the airplane as they were learning to fly, and when you're in that state, I think it's remarkable that they were able to create the games that they were, and that they had that sensibility about, at least at Lucasfilm Games and LucasArts, that the player's experience was so important, and that they did have a lot of respect, I think, for nice, turn the sheep green. So we'll just take Bobbin. They had so much respect for the player and for the experience and the quality of the storytelling, and also the quality of the humor and the art, and every aspect of the game was taken very seriously, even though they were also having a great time making these games. For the most part, there was so much laughter, and it's that experience that people have together, the camaraderie when they are crafting something unique, but also with so much humor infused in it, that it's kind of a rare experience to be around. And I have fond memories of that.
It was probably pretty frustrating for them to see that Sierra games are much more popular, even though they have dead ends.
Mm-hmm.
And at LucasArts, they put so much time into giving the player a better user experience by having him not die whenever he's exploring something, or not have to save every couple of minutes. But Sierra games were still more popular, at least in the US.
And that's that's true. Lucasfilm Games were sort of regarded as passion projects, as works. A lot of heart and love went into each of the games, and it shows. But also a lot of concern, I think, for the player's experience. And not wanting to frustrate the player without really good cause for doing so. It was rare, I think, that you would run into what felt like an unsolvable problem in a Lucasfilm game. Logically, for the
like the
players.
monkey wrench puzzle.
Yeah.
In Monkey Island 2.
That's a good example. But I'd like to think that there aren't too many of those. Now, this is an interesting little bit here where we're in a dark cavern. So what do we do? Here we go. Turn the lights on.
Another infamous puzzle is the fact that you need to wash a car in Day of the Tentacle in order to make it rain, because it's something that Dave Grossman's father told him. Once you wash your car, it's going to start raining.
Yeah.
And
Also known as the
Okay.
umbrella paradox, right? Where if you carry an umbrella, it won't rain.
And unfortunately, we didn't grow up in Dave Grossman's household when we were little, so we didn't know that fact.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of a cultural reference that doesn't translate very well, and completely non-obvious, right? I mean, come on. At the end of the day, every person who's ever created an adventure game of any kind, whether it's text or graphic, point and click, or anything else, where you have logical challenges that the player has to solve. You're always walking that line between making it not so obvious that it feels easy and not fun, and not so frustrating and non-obvious that it feels like you want to bang your head against a wall and it's not fun to play the game anymore and you just give up.
Tyburn says, I basically plagiarized Loom in both 2nd and 3rd grade writing class, but the story was too long for presentation, so the teachers always made me cut it off at the glassblower city. Well,
I love that.
Time to get the Disney lawyers
up
to speed on that fact and sue Tyburn.
Well, I love that games can be a touch point and an inspiration for students who are looking for inspiration.
ADDA. I don't remember what this one does.
Will it create a pool of water somewhere else?
We'll soon find
Do
out.
we have to get? I can't remember if we have to get through here or if we have to go.
Oh, that's right.
And use that draft somewhere else.
It's GDDE.
Oh, there you go. Good job.
No, this is draft from the flask at the beginning of the game. It's a good thing I wrote it down.
It is a good thing.
Otherwise, this would have been a Sierra game. Okay, so this was a bonus feature. I didn't really have to drain the pool to see this, or I did. Yeah. Wait, dry hole? No, dry as a bone.
Oh, another
Hurricane.
flash forward again. CFGC. Oh, hey now.
I
Should go
wonder
back
if
to the
they'll
cavern,
show
right?
us. Yeah.
Yeah.
They
For
should
the
show us
second.
live streaming the game when he looks at things that happen in the future. Us live streaming the game is the future.
Yeah, see, there you go. Wouldn't that be totally weird for people back in 1990 or the 90s, I should say?
Did you play the interactive TV show and the Bandersnatch episode of Black Mirror?
I have not.
So they removed it from Netflix, but back when it was available, then you'd have options. You'd have a timer that appeared on screen, and you'd have like 5 seconds to choose one of the two options, and this way you could choose various paths in the show itself. And
Oh, wow.
in one of the paths, the characters in the show were made aware that they're inside a Netflix TV show and are being controlled by people from outside.
I love that.
So this would have been a similar experience of them showing us live streaming the game in the game. Okay, let's use the Whirlpool.
It's not quite art imitating life, imitating art, but it's something sort of parallel to that. Nice.
Here
Use
says
that
what?
draft. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I could use that draft in real life occasionally. Make things so much easier if we could just unwrap a complicated route and just straighten it out.
Metaphorically and physically.
Yeah, yes, true.
So one of the most bone-chilling close-ups in the game is when the dragon eats Rusty, and you see the dragon talking to him and tapping his fingernail on him. And that's bone-chilling, and you don't have that in the CD version.
Yeah, that's a good example of something that was given up in order to make the CD version work. Sad.
AT Machine is talking in the chat about the disk switching in the 3.5-inch floppies. The disk switching happened in the untwisting staircase that we just saw. There you make the switch from disk 2 to disk 3, and the water spout was disk 1 to disk 2. The water
Those
spout
are
for the
awesome memories that, it's so funny because viewers who aren't familiar with the concept of having to put discs into a computer to play a game. And then also you're managing things like if the player then has to go backtrack, which they couldn't very well there because there was not a way to get back through the cavern, right? But I wonder if the game would force you to put disc 2 back in there if you went back up that staircase.
Yeah, and I think the end scene that I talked about, in which Ken Macklin created the fabric of reality, you go between all of the places that you've been through in the game, and I think in the end scene you also have to do some disc swapping because you go through so many
rough.
yeah, and it you know.
See, there's another aspect of producing the games at that point that most people wouldn't think about at this point because we don't have to worry about those kinds of memory issues as much. Different kinds of memory issues, for sure. How many polygons can you fit into memory at once now is more of a problem. But man, managing the content on the disks and how the disks sectors were mapped and how, literally what the player would experience while they were playing the game and then when you would have to swap disks. I mean, it's just kind of crazy to think about now. But it was a thing.
The things they had to deal with, things like scrolling screens, which we take for granted.
Exactly.
Whenever I read about the hacks they had to use to make smooth scrolling and command your keen back in the day, then you realize that they had to clear 8-bit of memory in order to create the column on the left of the column of pixels on the left, remove that from the memory, and place a new column of pixels on the right. And for us, it's just we're going to place the entire image in the memory, and we're just going to move it from side to side, and that's it.
And that's another thing. I mean, here we're looking at this screen, right? And I think it's, if I remember correctly, I think it's 640 by 480 pixels. That's why we're seeing the pixels in the emulator.
Yeah, the emulator is 640 by 480, but the game itself was 320 by
320 by 240 or 200
by 200 because 200 640 by 400.
Okay. I started in the Apple II. It was 192 pixels across, and every other pixel was a different color horizontally. That was a crazy thing.
Wait, I suppose.
There you go.
Oh yeah, that's the reflection.
Nicely done. So we're heading down to the Blacksmith's Guild, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's just Rusty.
So Rusty was supposed to be the main character, the lead character in The Forge.
Oh.
Did you not know that?
No, I did not. See, I'm learning things.
And there was a fan sequel, The Forge. Someone actually created a game.
Oh, that's so cool.
But as much as I love Rusty, I would have preferred to have Bobbin, the main character in the game.
Yeah. Well, especially when you invest as much in a character like Bobbin as you do by playing through a game like this, you want to see where his story takes him after that. Oh no.
A stick of wood. So yeah, by the late 90s, developers became much lazier and didn't clear the memory and didn't have to deal with these things. That's why the Flash platform died, because you had banners and just placed a huge image in the background and took up so many resources to show that. Well, just a few years back, people were hacking pointers in the memory or to have better scrolling.
Uh-huh.
And I remember scrolling was optional back then because some computers couldn't handle it. So you could turn it off.
I
Yawn.
forgot about that. Yeah, that's right. Oh, man. Imagine what we had to do to make things look like they were scrolling on the Apple II with a 1 megahertz processor. 1 megahertz, not 1 gigahertz, 1 megahertz. It's a
Here,
different time.
yeah, you don't have this
Yeah.
close up. This is the bone chilling close up I was talking about.
Oh my.
Well, he's not, Bobbin.
Nope.
Tyburn continues his story about the third grade. Back to my third grade story, my teacher thought distaff wasn't a word and had to check a dictionary. The teacher became the student that day.
I love that. Well, I hadn't heard that word before the project either. Or Rusty.
So you just saw the release of the DOS version, and that's it? Or did you...
Yes. Yes. All the other versions were managed by other people. I think Jenny Sward oversaw some of the other versions. I'd have to look at.
Jen Swart is the producer of the CD version, as far as I remember.
Yeah. But yes, I was on deck, and then I moved on to things like Monkey Island and other projects.
Did you like the reference to Loom in Monkey Island?
You're gonna have to remind me what that was, because I have forgotten.
So, you know what? Let's see if I have it available. I'm
just relieved that Bobbin got the staff back.
So when you go to the scum bar, Monkey Island. Then you have Cobb, which is a character in this game. And he's in the scum bar and trying to convince you to buy Loom.
I love that. Monkey Island did not come out much. It was fairly soon after Loom released that Monkey Island came out, right?
No, Loom came out in April or May. We haven't decided that yet. But Monkey Island came out in October of that year.
Okay, right.
So
but that
6
same
months
year,
later.
right? Yeah, yeah.
Wait. I think I missed a draft. Or did I listen to the draft that the Scythe plays? Not sure.
I didn't see it, so I may have missed it, but I think maybe it happens after the conversation. When he's just about done banging on the sword.
No, I'm supposed to play it now.
Oh, okay. So do we have to leave the room, come back? Replay the scene?
Wait.
Thank goodness you stopped banging on it. There we go. You did it.
No, I did not. Someone in the chat told me that I can use the twisting draft as well.
Oh, nice. Way to go, chat.
Because I didn't play the draft on the Scythe, and that would have helped me with the sword. But twisting also works. Either twisting or blunting will work, but learning sharpening is optional. Well, this is a bug. We can hear the banging sound, but he's not banging anything.
Yep.
Because we twisted the blade.
Thank goodness it stopped when the scene ended. That would have been most unpleasant.
So this is Cobb, and you get to meet him in the scum bar in Monkey Island, and he tells you about Loom.
Thank you. You know, I have the vaguest memory of that, but yes, that's fun. I like how they let Bobbin keep his staff even though he's in a cage.
Yeah.
Very thoughtful. He reminds me of somebody out of Tron or something like that. He's like Sark from Tron.
You know, one of the things I really liked when I got myself a copy of a point-and-click adventure game is look at the screenshots in the back and see all of these magical locations. And the back cover of the Hebrew version has this scene, while the English version does not.
Yep, you're right.
The scenes are
the English. Yeah, the English version has the blacksmith on the outside of the blacksmith guild, and then the sheep with the shepherd, and then the dock at the beginning of the game. Yep.
So over here we have Hetchel, the shepherd, and this scene. And I remember seeing this scene and wondering when I'll get to it because it seemed so extremely interesting.
Yeah, and it's a cool scene. Screenshots were always a big deal for me as a producer. I remember having heated arguments with other people over screenshots.
How
And
come
I was
you wanted to use different screenshots?
well, there was one project that I was working on. It wasn't like a big deal, but another person um, produced screenshots for that game without telling me, and they went to print. And I'm like, that first of all, it was just kind of sneaky not to tell me that they'd done that. And secondly, screenshots are like the most important way to sell a game when it's sitting on a shelf in a game store, because they're going to look at the cover art, yes, but then they're going to turn it over and look at the screenshots. And the bigger and better the screenshots are, the more that game is going to sell. That's how it worked. And I used to really sweat the details in screenshots just to make sure that they showed the game the very best that they could. Yeah, this is a great scene here.
So you told me that screenshot story in our conversation, and there's a link to our conversation down below. We had a 4-hour conversation. It premiered back in December 2024. 4 hours.
Hard to believe.
Yeah. It
I'm
was one of the
still
shorter conversations.
Well, I'm still grateful for that opportunity, Daniel. Thank you again for
Thank you. I can't thank you
interviewing me.
enough for this game, which people keep talking about. As you can see in the chat, people are fans of this game as much as I am a fan of this game.
Well, it's very heartwarming, and I'll just say that my ability to take any credit for it is very limited, but I was very grateful to be a part of this project. Um, you know, Brian really did something very, very special with Loom, and it's so important to recognize I think, the groundbreaking work that he did to extend the abilities of the Scum engine to do this game, and to think about doing an adventure game that has such a different interface, and such a different kind of story as well. So, so many aspects of Loom that I think stand out, and all of that is Brian's.
Here, people in the chat are thanking you. And Near says, thank you for the great memories. And AT Machine says, thanks so much, Greg, for producing this excellent game. And just like there are countries in which certain songs become hits, and in other countries they're rarely known. So I think it's the same with Loom. When it comes to people who were born in the 80s, people who lived in Israel back then played Loom, and it was a big part of their childhood because it was one of the first international games that was translated to Hebrew. I mean, not something produced here, but an English game that was in English that was translated to Hebrew. So everyone bought it over here. It was a huge hit.
That's amazing. I love hearing that. And thank you, guys in chat and gals, for your kind words. It means a lot. And it's really fun for me to revisit that period of my life and my career. Thank you.
Were there any talks of the sequels? I mean, I know that eventually they didn't work, but was there any point during production in which it seemed like Brian would actually work on the sequels themselves, or did they start any type of production on the sequels?
I'm not aware of any production that was started on a sequel. And again, I apologize because as soon as we shipped, as soon as we shipped the game, the original game, and then they were already working on, of course, porting it. my attention was firmly on Secret of Monkey Island as the producer of that game. And there was definitely some overlap in terms of my attention between Loom and Secret Monkey Island, but I didn't have the bandwidth after Loom was done and shipped because the ports were somebody else's responsibility, and I never really heard anything myself directly about ideas or work that Brian was doing or considering for a sequel. So you guys know as much as I do about that, really.
It's interesting that they didn't try to give it to someone else because, for example, Full Throttle was something that Tim Schafer created, but when he left LucasArts, then it didn't stop them from trying to work on Full Throttle too.
Yeah, and I have to remember also that Lucasfilm Games is always sort of a boutique game development company. Very passionate people, very talented creators. But if they had been any other software company than George Lucas's software company or game company, they probably wouldn't have lasted as long as they did because they were not commercially viable for much of what they did. They were labors of love, they were passion projects, and the handcrafted nature of the games and the quality of the art, the storytelling, the humor, everything. They had the opportunity to take their time and to make the games that they really wanted to make. And that's a very unique situation in the game industry. I can't think of another game studio that had that kind of working agreement and were given the latitude to do really what they wanted to do. Later it changed because later it became, when it was LucasArts and there was the recognition that they really should be doing more projects with established Lucasfilm hits like Indiana Jones, that changed the nature of things. But in the earlier days when they were doing things that they really wanted to do, they were left to their own devices for the most part. Poor Cobb. Bye-bye. And as such, it was a matter of who was available to do a project and what were their priorities, what were their preferences and their priorities. And this was Brian's project, and there was really nobody else who could pick it up and carry that vision or who necessarily wanted to do that. And as such, I think that's why you didn't see a sequel. Whereas you did see kind of a series of Monkey Island games that we all know and love. And, there was a team of people who recognized the quality and the genius of the first one and then wanted to keep going with that. And it wasn't always that same core people who were working on the sequels, but there was enough of a franchise there for them to build on. And I just don't know that was the case with Loom. It wasn't a commercial hit. It wasn't seen as something that they wanted to build on in terms of creating a franchise. This is my opinion and my perspective, and I'm sure that other people would disagree with me, but that's just how I remember it, how I see it. So I think that's why we didn't see more done with the Loom idea.
Who knows? Maybe they could make a Loom Netflix show.
Stranger things have happened.
Stranger Things has happened on Netflix. The show.
That's a good one. I gave you an opening. You took it. That was very good. we've seen some pretty weird game ideas try to get made into movies with mostly less than stellar results. But who knows? If the right person in Hollywood was reacquainted or remembered Loom fondly, it could happen.
I mean, there's so much to expand on, and the universe is so large and
Yes.
elaborate, and the character development is also amazing for such a short game.
Well, there you're getting into really the vision and the brilliance of Brian Moriarty, because this whole idea, this whole game, and the story and the characters are all from him. And he had cut his teeth earlier working at Infocom on text adventures, and so he knew his way around storytelling and how to make a game with a good story. And this was just the culmination of his work in that medium. I know he went on to do some other things. He worked on a game at Rocket Science Games. I don't know that there were too many other game projects that he worked on that were released after that, but this is his magnum opus in terms of adventure games, as far as I'm concerned.
As far as LucasArts is concerned.
There you go. Yes.
I love that Lucasfilm Games and LucasArts always preferred quality over quantity.
Yes.
Because at any given time, Sierra preferred to release 2 or 3 adventure games per year.
Mm-hmm.
While when it comes to LucasArts, there are a few years that are busier than others. There's also 1994, in which there was no adventure game from LucasArts because they were working on Full Throttle, which came out in 1995.
Mm-hmm.
No adventure game in 1996, but Curse of Monkey Island in 1997. And there were no huge IPs. The sequels, apart from Monkey Island, which became like 4, 5, 6 games, have Maniac Mansion, which has 1 sequel, Loom, which doesn't have any sequels. Indiana Jones is a movie franchise, so works differently in this case.
Right. But again, the rate of production and the number of games created at Lucasfilm Games and LucasArts, again, speaks to their charter. They were given the opportunity by George and the mission, really the mandate, to show what could be done in games as a medium if people were allowed to pursue their vision and their dreams for making whatever kind of game that they wanted to make. But there was a huge emphasis on storytelling, clearly. And there was not, all they were told was that they couldn't lose gobs of money. They couldn't be irresponsible, and they actually had to ship games, right? But they didn't have to prove themselves financially and commercially. And that's why you have games like Loom, and that's why we got a game like The Secret of Monkey Island, which again wasn't the biggest commercial success initially, but it was allowed to be built, and thank goodness.
And Ron also mentioned that if it hadn't been for Atari's license to Atari's exclusivity for creating Star Wars games, then none of these games would have come out.
Right, because they would have been focused on Star Wars games.
Just like
for obvious
they
reasons.
were after 1993 when they got back their license. It started with Rebel Assault, and then, it went on from there.
Mhm.
That's when LucasArts started releasing adventure games every 2 years, like I mentioned.
Now I'll take a moment here and say this feels an awful lot like quantum physics and um, moving through space in the way that Bobbin's been moving. How do you do that? Is it just magic, or I'll leave it to the audience to decide, but that's just my take. I feel like there's more than just fantasy and magic happening here. Mhm.
The first time I played the game in English, it was weird to read that Loom was the name of the island, because the name of the game in Hebrew is not Loom, it's the Weavers.
Oh, interesting.
So,
That makes sense.
yeah. So, for me, that's the name of the game. So, it was, when they translated that part to Hebrew, it was the island of the Weavers, while in English, it was called Loom Island, which is something different altogether.
Yes. Mhm.
Oh, we forgot to look at the tombstone after I opened up the sky.
Oh, yes.
Apparently the text is changed afterwards.
It's a good
Okay.
point. Well, Daniel, I'm just grateful that you remember and are driving here, because if it was me driving, we would have still be back much earlier in the game.
We would have gotten our 40 hours of gameplay.
Yeah, and people would have said, okay, well, that was fun for the first couple of hours, and then it was clear he didn't know what he was doing.
Are you good for another 15 minutes or so for us to finish the game?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
We're going to watch the grand finale of Loom, of the Weavers.
EFGC. Oh, nice of him to ignore Bobbin.
So after playing this game, I went to my piano teacher and I asked her to teach me all of Tchaikovsky's, pieces from the game.
Yeah, it's good for that. Birds and children have no business.
Maleficent.
It is very much Maleficent, isn't it? Nice loom you got there. It's a shame if something happened to it. Yeah, this is.
He hit the mute button on
Yes, he
Hetchel.
did.
It always surprised me how immersive this game was for me back when I played it when I was 8 years old, 9 years old. And how immersive it was, even though I played it on my PC speaker and there were no voices,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a monochrome screen. I had the Hercules graphics card.
Oh,
So I
wow.
played. So as lo-fi as you can get.
Yeah.
And still,
And
it
yet
was
still.
more immersive than any game I played since.
I love that.
Okay, let's unmute her. No. Yeah. Okay. BCCC, like an email.
I love that.
And the other way. C, 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 B.
There we go. Happy white sparkles.
Vibran says, interesting that swans are used as beautiful transcendent figures when in real life they're more aggressive than geese.
That's a very good point. But if you want to use Swan Lake as your musical backdrop, I think swans is appropriate. Oh, brutal.
Okay, let's see.
The moment has arrived.
CBCB. The draft for unfood as opposed to the food draft.
Yay. Hetchel, the signet with all the power.
Man, this game is short. We
Yes,
talked,
it is.
we laughed, we had fun, and it's the end of the game.
Oh, yeah, that's going to be tough to reverse.
That was brutal.
Yep.
I mean, Brian took a lot of visual cues from Sleeping Beauty.
Yes.
And weren't you afraid that Disney would sue? I mean, eventually Disney would buy Lucasfilm.
Well, so here's the thing, though. Unless you are using likenesses of characters and scenery that are clearly derived from a property like that, you're generally not dealing with. I mean, we talked about this character looking like Maleficent, and that's clearly an inspiration for this character's look, and yet it wasn't enough for Disney to be coming in with their lawyers and suing Lucasfilm. So
Loom is unmade. I remember first time I played it in English, I opened the dictionary to understand every other word here.
I love that. See, now there's the perfect entry there for a sequel, right? Is remaking the Loom and using it to do some new things. But it was not to be. There we go.
Okay. That's it. I'm ready.
Got your high C.
These are amazing graphics for 1990.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And reversing the camera angle here was just such a cool idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To connect.
And the fact that you
segue.
can point at yourself, which is a first for LucasArts games, because you usually can't do that.
Mm-hmm. There we go.
This is Ken Macklin's animation.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And here you had disc swaps and all the characters from the sequels.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Oh, what a pain. You want to keep seeing the end of the game here. Put it in disc 2.
This is Rusty looking at his future.
Yeah.
And the scythe becoming a moon.
The scythe. Yep. And the boy fishing from the moon. Oh no, that's DreamWorks. Sorry. Mark Ferrari.
That's it.
Well done and well played.
We did it, Greg. Now let's see if you actually worked on this game. I want to see your credit.
Let's see, because it's funny because in the little insert that comes with the game, they didn't have a full list. Gary Hammond at the bottom, that's my father. He did some of the music as well.
Your entire family worked on this game. Eric Hammond.
It's my brother. Lonnie. Yep.
Ron and Eric.
Yes. And Eric does get credit in the insert for the PC edition. Testing, one of the most underappreciated and most important aspects of game development.
Mm-hmm. Jenny Sword.
Mm-hmm.
Produced by Gregory D. Hammond.
That's me. I would just like to thank you for providing this opportunity, because I would not have been reacquainted with Loom otherwise, and I wouldn't have gotten to spend time with you and enjoy your playthrough. So thank you Thank you so much, Daniel.
And thank you for producing this magnificent game. And you keep belittling your role in the game, but there are no small roles because you made it happen, just like the animators made it happen, just like Brian made it happen. So without all of you guys, this game wouldn't have come to light. So thank you.
On behalf of the entire team, I will say you're welcome and thank you for loving this game so much. It's truly an honor to, and it's really a privilege to see how much the game is appreciated still. So, Daniel, thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you all for watching. And maybe we can find a different game to play next time. Someone mentioned it in the chat that he played Pajama Sam a while ago, and he saw your name in the credits.
Which one?
Pajama Sam.
Wait a minute. Say the game one more time.
Wait. I want to make sure that you're actually in the credits for that game. Because maybe he noticed your name.
Is it Pajama Sam?
Yeah.
No, I didn't work on that game. But I appreciate the thought anyway. Now I'm going to go check out that game.
Interesting. Because I don't remember you working on the game either, but he saw your name in the credit.
Huh. That's interesting.
Okay, we'll have to look into that. But anyway,
yeah.
What I actually want to play with you next time is Wings of Fury, which is another game
my gosh.
I played to death as a kid.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. There's some good stories behind that game.
Yeah. And
that would be fun.
And, I also played the Carmen Sandiego games and
yes.
The Secret of Monkey Island, of course. We can play that, but I want to play Wings of Fury with you because it was such a huge part of my childhood. And just as realistic, I would call Loom more immersive, but Wings of Fury was more realistic, even though it was released in 1987.
Yeah.
And
the level of detail in that game is just remarkable. And I have to say it was quite a labor of love to get that game out the door, and I'll share some great stories for when we get to play that game together.
Very well. Okay, so thank you all for joining. Thank you, Greg, once again for producing the game and for playing the game all the way through with me for the first time after 36 years of not playing this game. I mean, this should be a game that should be played at least once a year, if not once a month. If not once, it's short enough to be played once a day, if you have the time. So thank you again,
Daniel.
Thank you again,
It's
Greg.
been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure indeed. And have a lovely weekend. Bye, guys.
Same to you, my friend. Thanks.